Good afternoon, students. So, today I'm going to continue with the second part of the second chapter titled Lost Spring, the Stories of Stolen Childhood. So, yesterday I kind of forgot to justify the title or explain the title, right? Lost Spring is a metaphor used by the author to indicate the loss of childhood. So in India, there are millions of children who are minors and they are engaged as laborers and they are called child laborers, right? So that is lost, right? Their childhood is lost. And spring usually comes at the very beginning of the four seasons, right? Spring, summer, autumn, and winter. So here, spring symbolizes uh, hope, happiness, and joy. But unfortunately, the child laborers do not get to enjoy their childhood days. So that's why the title is justified like this: Lost Spring, Stories of Stolen Childhood. All right. Okay, so let's continue with the second part of the chapter, that is, I want to drive a car. Right, so when the author meets Mukesh, they have already started their conversation. So the chapter opens with Mukesh insisting or on saying that he wants to become a motor mechanic, right? So when author asks if he knows anything about cars, he answers that he will learn driving and hence learn about the parts of motor, right? So after Mukesh has said that, author feels that his dream of becoming a motor mechanic is like a mirage, is like a fantasy, or say illusion, like that of the dust or amongst the dust of Firozabad. So that means his aim of becoming a motor mechanic is something that is beyond his reach. He cannot achieve his dream of becoming motor mechanic. All right. So the author goes on to describe Firozabad. Remember, in the first part, the author describes Simapuri. Now, in this part, author describes Firozabad. So, Firozabad is a famous place and it is also known for its glass bangle making industries, and it is the center of India's glass blowing industry. And people working there in the glass bangle industries are the families who spend generations after generations making bangles. And people there are so illiterate, so backward that they are not even aware of the fact that hiring their own children to work uh, is illegal. So people are totally unaware of the social stigma, child labor, right? If a proper law is enforced, or if the state government enforces law, there will be about 20,000 children who will be released from such a situation. That means the number of children working in glass bangle is 20,000 children, and they work in a very poor condition. Now, it will be later on described how or in what working condition they work. All right. So one day, when author wishes to visit the slum area, or Firozabad, Mukesh volunteers to take the author, and then he also takes author to his home. All right. So while on the way, the lanes, the streets were filled with garbage. There is, litter all around, and the houses are built so poorly. And one could see the walls are about to crumble or about to fall down, and they do not have proper doors like we have, proper windows like we have. The doors are wobbly. Wobbly means poorly built or poorly made, and there are no windows. All right. So in some of the houses, not only humans. Now imagine people living in such area do not have any family planning, so there will be numerous children in the same house, right? So apart from a large family, animals also lived in the same house. So imagine how unhygienic the condition will be or would be, right? Okay, so Mukesh finally takes the author to his home, and his home is no better than the others. It is half-built shack. Shack means not properly built. It is poorly built, and it has a dry grass as roof, and the house has a iron door, which is again making whole lot of sound, and it might uh, break if you kick it hard. All right so once they enter into Mukesh house, Mukesh's sister-in-law, that means Mukesh brother's wife, is found to be making or preparing dinner for the family. And uh, when her father-in-law, or when Mukesh's father comes in, she covers her face with the veil in the sense, in Hindi word it is pallu, or it's a piece of or a part of sari that is worn over their head. So this is done as a mark of respect for the elderly member in the family. It is considered to be a tradition. So if you have watched Hindi serials, you'll see particularly Rajasthani serials, the bahus or the wives have their faces covered. All right. And all right, so and then the author goes on to describe Mukesh's father. His first profession was a tailor, and when he could not earn much from tailor, he shifted his uh, job from tailor to making bangles. All right, and so far, after many years of hard work, he could not renovate or bring about some good he could not reconstruct the house or renovate or make changes to the house, and he could not even educate his two sons. All right, what all he could do, or all he managed, was to teach his sons the art of making bangles, or how to make bangles. So that's his only achievement. All right. And then Mukesh grandma, so Mukesh's grandmother has witnessed, or had seen her own husband, become blind due to polishing off the dust from the bangles. So the dust could be very harmful to the eyes, and not only to eyes, it could be very dangerous if you inhale the dust, right? So she had seen her husband go blind. That means Mukesh's grandfather is a blind man, right? And then she considers that making bangles is like a lineage carried on by, or carried forward by, the family. It is like a God's gifted lineage. So every members in the family should carry on the tradition of making bangles, because she considers that is a kind of a God's gift, and or God's gifted lineage, right? And wherever you go, be it in the houses, be it in the yard, or be it everywhere, the author could see colorful bangles being displayed. Some were piled up in carts pushed by young men, so obviously to sell uh, the bangles. all right. And then even in the courtyard, everywhere they could see bangles. And the author describes their working condition, how these people work, the conditions in which these people work. So do not imagine the houses to be properly lit, or with proper ventilation. It is just in contrast to what you are imagining. So the houses, the rooms are totally, not completely, but poorly lit. It does not have proper light, and it does not, because of not having windows, it is poorly ventilated. All right. And then, so working in such condition, there are dangers. This That could be dangerous. So dangers in what sense? Right? The first one is, surely people working in a dimly lit room would cause them their vision, or they might go blind at an at a very early young age. All right. And the second one is, they may develop diseases because of inhalation of dust, or the skin being exposed to high high temperature. For their skins may contract or develop skin diseases because of exposure to furnaces that is that has great or high temperature. So remember, they need to have furnaces uh, in which it needs to be so hot so as to melt the glasses and make glasses or glass bangles out of it, right? And so there's a new character in the chapter, Savita. So Savita is not a part of Mukesh family. She is just one of the children. All right. So the author describes Savita is a young girl who is soldiering the glass bangles. Soldiering means lining up one after another, right? And she is found sitting next to an old woman. And author wonders if Savita knows the value, the worth, or the preciousness, or the sanctity of the bangles that she is making, or she is lining up. Because for Indian women, bangles are considered to be sacred. It is a sign of Indian women's suhag. Suhag means, uh, longevity of their husband's life. All right. So the author wonders if Savita knows the sacredness of the bangles that she is working on. All right. And one day, like the old woman she is sitting with, the old woman has colorful bangles on her wrist. She is wearing colorful bangles, but the bangles are described to be so shiny and bright, but there is no shine, there is no brightness in the old woman's eyes. That means her vision is also um, has become poor, or she might have become blind because of working in glass glass bangles making uh, industry. All right. So Savita would also be one day married like the old woman. One day she would be wearing bangles up to her wrist, on her wrist, up to her arms. She will be wearing, red dress, and her head covered with a veil, and her hands would be dyed with mehendi. All right, that's usually what one gets to see in scenes in the movies or in serials when a girl gets married. All right. Okay, so the author goes on to describe the older woman. Like I told you, she was wearing shiny or dazzling bangles on her wrist, but there's no brightness seen in her eyes. So it's obviously her vision has become poor because of working in such poor condition rooms with poor ventilation, with poorly lit rooms. All right. So she has worked as a glass bangle maker for many years, but pathetically, she informs the author that she hasn't had this moment of, you know, eating a complete meal in her life. That means her stomach is never full of the food that she wants to, because of the shortage of food, because of the pathetic condition of these poor people. All right. And she also tells that her husband has managed to build the a poorly built house that they are living in. So the author, after hearing the old woman mentioning her husband managing to build the shack, she wonders if uh, many other could have even achieved that, building, having a roof on their head. Right. So at least he has managed to build a house, though not properly built, or though it was a shack, but he has managed to build something which many others have failed to build. All right. So the next paragraph talks about the same complaint, the complaint of not having enough money, the complaint of not having enough food to eat. It is the same complaint in all the families. All right. So I'll read. The complaint of not having enough money to start something new, but to carry on with the present business, making bangles. So this indicates that these people in Firozabad are so backward, economically so backward, that they do not have enough money to start something new other than making bangles. So they are left with no option but to continue their legacy of making bangles, right? And in most of the houses, the same problem of not having enough food to eat is common, is heard everywhere. And a young man, the youth, also repeats the same complaint of uh, not having this enough money, or not having enough food to eat, or whatever the complaint is made by the elderly man. So by hearing them, by looking at situations in Firozabad, almost nothing has changed in so many years. All right. So it's is some kind of, there's no changes noticed in Firozabad. Whatever it was, it is still there. So that means pathetically poor. And because of not having enough money to start a new business, or not having proper or enough profit, even after many years of working in a glass making industry, it has kind of, mm, killed their initiative, or their willingness, or their daring to dream something big. So they just accept their fate as a bangle makers. They do not try to think beyond uh, the box, or out of the box. All right. Now the reason is because they do not have uh, money. And even, okay, now the next one, the fifth one is, so when after hearing to the complaints or the problems faced by people in Firozabad, the author asked a group of men, why do they not form themselves into cooperatives? Cooperatives means a joint organization, right? So in Tibetan we can say nyamdil, nyamdil. So when she asked why they cannot form themselves into cooperatives, the answer given by these young men is, they, even if they try to form themselves into cooperatives, they are uh, or they are put in jail with wrong accusations, with wrong allegations. The police would, accuse these people for doing something illegal, even if they have tried to do something different other than making bangles, but they would be charged with wrong allegations or wrong accusations, and they would be beaten and tortured in the jail. And they are also trapped by the middleman. You know what middlemen do? They earn the profit from the consumer as well as the producer, right? So here middleman includes rich people, politicians, sahukars. It's a Hindi word meaning moneylenders, right? So these people in Firozabad are trapped, are caught in a web of poverty, trapped by the middleman, right? Okay, so even if, no matter how hard they work, but the entire profit is taken up by or is taken by rich people or politicians or those people in power. All right. So because of the torture given by the politicians, by the jailers, or by the prisoners, or the police officials, they dare not to start or form themselves into cooperative. Because of that, there is no leader to lead them or to guide them, right? So everybody talks endlessly in spiral that moves from poverty to apathy to greed and injustice. This means that the young people too complain the same thing, like repeatedly mentioned by their elderly. They complain about poverty, they complain about apathy, they complain about greed, injustice done by the moneylenders to them. Okay, so by listening to their stories, uh, the author sees two different worlds. The first one is family caught in a web of poverty. They, because they are born in a, glass making cast, glass bangle making cast. They are kind of, burdened because of the caste that they are born into. So because they are caught in a web of poverty because of economically backward, they do not have much money to start a new business, right? Because of the caste that they are born, uh, the family is caught, all right? And then second one is uh, being trapped by those wicked moneylenders, policemen, politicians, bureaucrats, and the middlemen. So there are two different worlds that the author says. The first one is because of having been born in glass bangle making cars, and the second one being caught in being trapped by those people in power. So the next paragraph talks about the author the next paragraph talks about a general child, all right, not specifically mentions one child or the other. She takes up a child as a general child, all right. uh, so both this world, family caught in a web of poverty, and the second world, people being trapped by these moneylenders, policemen, or the people in power, have kind of, burdened the children or have burdened the younger generations. It is like, the children naturally accept his fate of making bangles rather than thinking of something other or doing something different. So he naturally accepts without even a question. All right. And then if they dare to do something different from what they have been doing, um, it is not in their blood, right? So uh, it is totally out of question for them, daring to do something different from what they have been doing. All right. But the author, after hearing Mukesh desiring to become a motor mechanic, she is kind of happy, all right, because Mukesh is someone who is totally different from the rest of the children living in Firozabad. All other children have accepted their fate as a glass bangle makers, whereas Mukesh dares to do something different, that is to become a motor mechanic, right? So when the author asks Mukesh how he is going to learn uh, about the motor parts, he says that he will walk to a garage that is quite far off from his own place. So he doesn't mind. There, his eyes lit up, meaning he uh, feels happy. There is a kind of enthusiasm. There's a kind of zealous in him when answering that question. So he is quite determined about uh, becoming a motor mechanic, no matter how hard it is going to be him. So even though the garage is somewhat far away from his own home, he is going to walk there and learn about motor parts. All right. And then the last stanza, a sentence of the chapter ends with few airplanes fly over Firozabad. So it means that due to lack of exposure and opportunity, uh, Mukesh doesn't want to become a pilot when the author asks if he wants to become a pilot. And Mukesh doesn't want to become a pilot. He is happy with the idea of or with his dream of becoming a motor mechanic. So it can also be considered that Firozabad is economically a backward city and there isn't any airport nearby or around the city. All right. So uh, even if it happens to be the route of a few flights, you know it's very few airplanes that are flying over the city. So due to lack of exposure, he cannot think of becoming pilot and flying airplanes or that is something beyond his reach. All right. So he is rather he is happy with the idea of or dreaming of becoming a uh, motor mechanic. All right. So a few airplanes fly over Firozabad. In this sentence, the author has used irony as a figure of speech. All right, irony, because irony means suppose there are two situations, they do not match with each other. All right. So suppose I say something and I do something different, that becomes irony. All right. And the second figure of speech used here is mm, alliteration, for sound repeated thrice in the sentence. So with this, I've come to the end of the second chapter. So if you have any doubt, please message me privately or in the group.